I'm Claire Parker.
And I'm Ashley Hamilton. And this is Celebrity Memoir Book Club, the podcast where... Do you have one?
No, I just forgot to stop.
Oh. Well, try to say it in sync with me. The podcast where we
think we're doing
a good job
for the world and instead incite violence.
Instead, we start a violent genocide and give access to a totalitarian regime.
And target teens feeling vulnerable. But it's not our fault. We thought we could fix it from the inside.
Yeah, so if you don't want that, scroll out now. But if you're on board for our plans for the future.
If that was unlistenable, we'll never do it again. I don't know what compelled me. We're in a mood because today we're doing a serious book, and let me tell you, it is putting me and Ash on edge.
I'll tell you what, sometimes you open your Twitter and you look at the state of the world and you go, Ashley, if you don't want to be sad, how about you learn? How about you grow? How about you engage with literature? And then you read a book about the state of the world and you go, fuck.
Why would you think learning what's behind the tweets would make you feel better?
I just thought as long as it wasn't on the internet, it was good for you.
Yeah. In the words of my favorite Toronto girl, I'm sick to my stomach, fam. On the bright side, Ashley, any news, any updates, any recommendations?
God, I am swimming upstream like a little salmon fighting for my goddamn life, trying to get through Love Island episodes. That's all I've been doing lately. That's all I have time for.
When I think about Love Island, I think about like a building's on fire and like you're the brave dad that goes back in to save a kid.
Yeah, that's how I feel too.
I feel like taking on Love Island when you're behind is like walking into a burning building. You guys are the kid.
Exactly.
She's pulling out content for you guys.
I mean, if I'm going to have friends and family and like walk my dog and keep up with Love Island, I've got nothing else. That's all I have time for.
You have anything to say about it?
I don't want to have a conclusion about it because this is going to come out in 2 weeks and it's already going to be like 13 episodes ago.
That's so true. People will have been together and broken up and together and broken up and reshuffled, right?
I mean, 100 times. I just feel like whatever I say today is going to be irrelevant in 48 hours, let alone 2 weeks.
You know, I feel like we're almost the girls from Dune. You know what I mean? You don't know, but some listeners might know. Like we're like those old witches from Dune commenting what's happening on Love Island, and then the grandmother scoffs and goes, "The planet was destroyed many millennia ago." Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And then, okay, I have a recommendation of an item that I have a love-hate relationship with, and it's my new running watch that I got for my birthday. I got a Coros Pace 3, and I wanted a running watch really bad because I'm training for a marathon, and I feel that it is the best way. Like, you know, tracking in the Strava app just really fucks with you.
I blame Strava to this day for why my pace was so far off what I thought I was going to run, and I think it's because absolutely they were just lying to me by fully a minute.
Yeah, probably.
I thought I was the fastest girl in the world.
But what I've found, because I haven't trained for a marathon, I haven't had a running watch, I haven't like really done gadgets in the running space since like 2018. And so the way that they've evolved, and every running watch is also a smartwatch that you're supposed to wear like all the way through your wedding day and to your grave. I don't like this life. Like, I don't want data for everything, but it also like kind of requires it.
Do you think a running watch would think death would be like a really good night's sleep or a really bad night's sleep?
They say permanent REM. You did it, baby. What we were hoping you would try.
Do you know what I mean? Because on the one hand, what's deeper? But on the other hand, I don't think you're recalibrating right.
Yeah, it's not restful.
Yeah. You're not going to wake up feeling plump. Okay, sorry, go.
Anyway.
Just a thought I had.
And exactly as I expected, engaging with one of these different, like I get so, you know, you see numbers and you're like, I got to beat my numbers from yesterday. And I'm like, no, I don't want to be this person who's wearing a fucking gadget all the time. I don't like that. I don't want to live this life. I don't want my sleep data. But then because I now have a thing in my house where I can have my sleep data, I'm like, well, should I try sleeping in it and see if I'm sleeping good?
I'm so
and I'm like, you could wake up and just guess. Like you wake up in the morning and you know, yes or no, was it good or bad?
And I was talking to somebody whose defense of it was like, well, it's good to know, like if you got a good night's sleep, you can kind of trace what you did differently that night. And I'm like, I know what you did differently. Like, you didn't look at your phone. You got to bed earlier on time. You didn't drink beforehand.
Yeah.
Listen up. If you're trying to figure out how to better your sleep, try those 3 things. You don't need a fucking watch. The watch can't get you to put your phone and TikTok down. You know what I mean?
So I'm loving the running aspects of it. And I like the things it tracks for workouts and stuff like that. But I feel like I'm being haunted by a haunted clock that like wants to control my life, and I'm resisting it. I don't want it to. I just get very competitive with myself because then I'm like, ooh, like, so many steps the day before, like try to beat it. And I'm like, no, we can't live anyway. So right now I'm in a battle
with
the watch.
Yeah.
It's watching me. Claire, what do you recommend?
The Rehearsal season 2.
Oh, that's a show?
Yeah, it's with Nathan Fielder. People on the Patreon have been recommending it to us, both of us, for a while now, and I finally got into it. I mean, it is genius. I'm a huge Nathan Fielder fan. I think Nathan For You is one of the great TV shows of all time. That episode where he takes people on a hike to get their gas rebate, and it's a 3-day hike, and they just start opening up about I really am like, oh, he's a genius. I'm obsessed with that show. The Curse and Rehearsal season 1 were tough for me. They tested my loyalty and my patience and how far I was willing to be deeply uncomfortable for no payoff. And so I kind of tapped out and I said, well, he's doing something and I don't know if I'm following him down the road. Do you know what I mean? I felt like it's a thin line between who's the butt of the joke. And I think his genius is
everybody.
Yeah. And like, I felt he was crossing lines that didn't make it enjoyable to me anymore. And it is just television. It's meant to be enjoyable.
But you're back in it.
But season 2 is as good as everybody says. It's very silly. It's really fun. It's really like kind of incredible what you can do with a ton of money. We talked on the Patreon last week, I believe, or a couple weeks ago, about the way these insane amounts of money that are going to specific shows are almost ruining TV.
Yeah.
And it's fun to see a man be given a blank check and really do crazy shit with it.
Should I watch it? Do you think I would like it?
Sure, but I'll be talking about it more on the Patreon this week. So that was my recommendation.
I can't. I have no time.
If he's lost you, I think once you were lost and now you are found.
Fun.
Yeah.
Should we get into this week's book? Speaking of, who's the butt of the joke?
Who's the butt of this joke?
I don't know. I don't know.
What's the joke?
The joke is who can get the most power in the United States of America.
And I think we're the butt.
Yay.
Because I'll just say I wasn't laughing. I read this book and I didn't laugh. I cried on the subway.
Much like Sarah and Tom in a swarm of bees, I was laughing the entire time. I said, oh, we live in hell.
Okay, so Sarah Wynn-Williams.
Not a celebrity,
but she's written a book.
Written a book about how she was adjacent to a celebrity, Facebook, for a long time.
Mark Zuckerberg.
Sheryl Sandberg.
We read Lean In for Chelsea Fagan's podcast, The Financial Diet, which is on YouTube. We did Lean In and Rich Dad, Poor Dad across 4 episodes. It was really fun. I highly recommend it.
I mean, listen, we had our suspicions about Sheryl, and then, I've got Google, so I have heightened my suspicions over the last 2 years, my disdain, I guess. And now this book really paints her in a light that I said, yeah, that's kind of devastating and what I was expecting based on her recent documentary work. So Careless People, A Cautionary Tale of Power, Greed, and Lost Idealism, is a book about her time at Facebook. She had been a lawyer and a diplomat for New Zealand, and she came into Facebook very juiced up on the idealism of what Facebook could be as a global connector and what it would mean for global policy, and she left in a body bag.
Okay. I'm going to do my best to be peppy for you guys. So don't stray, because I actually think this is an important book, and I think we're doing important work here by reading it for you.
I will say one thing is it's a bit tough to read because I think obviously as a young blonde girl from New Zealand, throughout most of her career, she was taken like very not seriously. And you can really see it in this book, the way that they just brush off everything she says ever, forever. And so this book is written in a very tight tone, which I think in parts made it kind of hard to get through because she's like really trying to emphasize the seriousness of these situations, but it's like really serious and devastating shit over and over and over and over again. It's like reading legal documents in like a congressional briefing.
Yeah, so she talks about how she wanted to go to Facebook in 2009 because she wanted to save the world. She's from Christchurch, New Zealand, which is a small town. And she's like, I guess we'll start at the beginning. From New Zealand, normal childhood. One kind of crazy thing happened to me. And that crazy thing was once when my family was camping, when I was 13, I was attacked by a shark and it brought me under the water. And it turns out it was trying to drown me. And I realized I was going to drown to death. And luckily I fought back so hard that it gave up. But I was just lying on the beach, bleeding out from my abdomen because it had, bit her and tried to drown her. And these fishermen tried to save her, but she was so embarrassed because she had no bottoms on. The shark had taken her bottoms. And so she tried to be like, I'm okay, even though she was on the beach bleeding out.
Gushing blood out of her stomach.
They carried her to her parents. Her parents drove to the nearest town. There wasn't a nearby hospital, but there was like a family doctor nearby. So he came in, he sews her up, no anesthesia, tells her parents, don't worry, she'll be fine. If she's acting hysterical tonight, it's just the shock of it all. Her parents are like, thank God. They go back to their camping trip. The big treat is, since she's been attacked by a shark, she gets to sleep in the camper tonight. She doesn't have to sleep on the ground with them all night. She's waking up, feels like she's on fire, and she's puking up blood, and she can't breathe. She keeps telling her parents. Her parents go, the doctor said you are fine.
It turns out the shark has perforated her bowel. So she is septic. Like she is fully leaking intestinal
like feces. Her feces have gotten into her bloodstream in her body and they're like running rampant. She's in sepsis. Her left lung has collapsed. When she's sitting there, she's having a hard time breathing and telling her parents this. And her mom goes, don't be so dramatic. Stop making yourself hyperventilate. Then her eyes roll back into her head and she loses consciousness. And then her mom goes, maybe this is a real problem.
So they go back to the town doctor.
They think she's dead. She says that they're driving slowly because her dad's like an avid fisherman. And every time they go over a bridge, he's kind of trying to see what the fish is going to be like, the fishing situation will be like. And she's fighting tooth and nail not to go into the dark night. She, throughout her life, I think, comes up against death like 3 times. Anyway, so she's like trying not to die. She gets there. They put her on the table. They get 2 more doctors. They're looking at her going, well, this isn't good. She hears them say, we think she's dead. Her dad goes, oh no, that was my favorite daughter. And her mom goes, oh my God, this just happened with Lenny. Lenny was their cat. He had just died. So she's like, I'm happy I'm my dad's favorite, but also like, I wish I was more important than the cat. Anyway, so she's lying there dying, trying not to, when all of a sudden the doctor takes an axe and hacks at her wrists and her ankles. She's, again, conscious. She's not like fully there, but she can feel it. She has no anesthesia. She thinks they're doing an autopsy on her. She goes, oh my God, I'm going to die during my own autopsy. It turns out when somebody's like basically dead, this is the last ditch effort you can do to try to get blood into them. Like when you're that close to death, your veins recede, I suppose. And so in order to get external blood into her, they just have to like gash at you and like dump it gallon challenge style. I like Gatorade on a winning coach.
Size bucket challenge.
Yeah, but blood.
But blood to the open wrist. Anyway, so then they get her on a helicopter. They get her to a hospital. She's like in and out for a while. She finally wakes up. She's alive. Every time someone told me I was lucky to survive, I thought, shouldn't I be doing something with this life, devoting myself to changing the world in some way? How do you do that? So this really sets you up where you're like, what the fuck? What? What happened to her?
And I feel like this is one of those books because you're reading it and by the end you go, oh, well, this is an insane person who was raised in like, what do you mean your parents did not care if you lived or died? I'm sorry. If I was attacked by a shark, I don't have perfect parents, but I think they would say, well, the camping trip's over.
I think my parents would be like pretty bummed out about it. And they would have been like, this is why Jewish people don't go camping.
You guys were big campers, no? But not by the ocean, I guess.
But we would do it like in a very safe. We would be like, this is why Jewish people don't go camping. We're going to do it in a way where we've got cars and electricity plugged in.
I mean, I just think if I was attacked by a shark and then I told my mom like something feels up, she wouldn't just go, you're being dramatic.
That's the thing is I had real like, you're going to school unless you're dying parents. But
me too.
Had I been bitten by a shark that day, I think they'd be a little bit more open to me not feeling good.
You know what I mean? Like, there's no like, is it really a cold or do you just have a test today? We can all see the shark bites. There's like, no, is she faking being attacked by a shark? It was real.
It was real. And now she's still camping. So even if she is faking it to get you guys to go home from camping, what about you guys just go home from camping?
Ladies, you ever hate camping so bad? You get a shark to bite you and then you go into septic shock and then you get hacked at. Anyway. So she wants to do something important with her life. I think she was born a hard worker, smart, intense person. I was thinking about some of the women in my life who I know who are very hard, diligent workers. And I'm like, yeah. And I guess they were all one shark attack with nonchalant parents who don't care if you live or die away from becoming like actual psychopaths.
So she goes into international law and she ends up working in diplomacy.
She's at the UN. But it's hard because, you know, I don't know if you guys have heard, the UN really doesn't have much power anywhere. And it's very idealistic. And she's like, I spent a lot of time sitting in conference rooms, fighting over commas versus semicolons.
And just like editing documents that become recommendations that become nothing.
Yeah. And she's like, I'm also from New Zealand. I represent New Zealand a lot. Turns out people don't really care about New Zealand. She wants to like get her foot in the game. She's like, there has to be a better way to help. And then she gets really into Facebook.
She becomes obsessed with Facebook and the opportunity within Facebook. She really sees it as the revolution. And so she believes that there is a major hole in their team right now where no one is working on international policy for Facebook, which is a website that is global. But she's like, there needs to be someone who is getting in on the ground floor and like outlining Facebook's policies, community guidelines, things like that. Because as we enter more and more countries and as they become bigger and bigger, it's better to get these things done before you're fighting against someone.
Yeah. And so she sees this and she sees this as an amazing way to like help spread democracy, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, that's what we all want, democracy, I guess. And so she reaches out to Facebook. She becomes like obsessed. I guess like we should have seen it here. She's real cray. She becomes obsessed with getting into Facebook. So she sends them emails. She like finds a mutual contact. She's like stalking people. She's like, at one point I found this woman, Marnes.
Is her name Marnie?
That would make sense.
Okay.
But
I kept on reading it as Marn. And then I was like, it's possible that it's Marnie.
Either way, I'd like to call her Marnie because that's the name I've heard of. And Marn is like weirdly hard to say in the throat.
Yeah.
Anyway, Marnie, she's like, I knew better than to call her at home because I think that would freak her out. But I kept like coming at her and pitching her and being like, you guys need help. You need help for the policy. You're going to change the world.
Okay, so she for ages can't even figure out anyone's name besides Mark Zuckerberg. And then she finds out about Marnie. And then she stalks the shit out of Marnie and finds out that they have a mutual friend named Ed. And so then she's like, Ed, you've got to put me in touch with this woman. He puts her in touch. She sends email after email after email being like, here's my plan for Facebook's future.
Of like 18 months. Like she will not, to the point where at one point her fiance is like, you please stop talking about Facebook. They don't want you. You have to move on. And so she tells them her pitch. They don't really care. And then quickly it's the Arab Spring. If you guys remember 2011, there was a lot of demonstrations happening specifically, I think in Egypt, where they were like fighting for democracy and protesting and stuff. And I guess she gets a call from Marnie being like, hey, people are giving Facebook credit for facilitating this. Should Mark accept the credit? Should we come out and be like, yeah, we did that. The Arab Spring is thanks to us.
How you answer this question about the Arab Spring depends on what your strategy is for China. If you take credit for the People's Revolution, China will be less likely to allow Facebook back into China. She is brilliant. She knows so much about so much stuff.
Well, can I say this is her book?
Yeah. Well, what I'm saying is, I think this book is a lot about Facebook not being able to see the forest through the trees. And I would say the same back at her.
Yeah. I think for somebody who has such insight into everybody, it took her until, spoiler alert, she got literally fired from Facebook after watching them oversee a genocide that they refused to help stop. I mean, I guess haven't we all? I think she wants to do good, and I do think she's smart and understands the nuances of things. And it is crazy at the beginning that Facebook didn't see any of this coming up.
Yeah.
So she's like, okay, cool. They still won't let her in. Again, this is another story where I'm like, what is wrong with you? She's boarding a plane from like Atlanta to New York with her, or Atlanta to DC, wherever, a short little plane ride with her husband. As she's boarding, she gets a call from a New Zealand number she doesn't know. It's her sister.
Her sister says, I think I'm going to die. And she goes, wait, what? I'm running to catch a plane.
She goes, I can't get through to mom or dad or anyone. I've borrowed a phone. Just tell everyone I love them. I don't think we're going to get out. And then the call drops. She obviously panics and starts calling her sister and is like boarding the plane being like, Mom, Dad, where is everybody? And she's like, I can't get through to anybody. And then as soon as the door closes, she's like, you know what? I probably shouldn't have gotten on this plane.
Yeah.
Guess what? There was a horrible, horrible earthquake in Christchurch where she's from.
Her sister ended up being fine, but she was trapped in a building. Everyone was trapped in places. Everyone turned out fine in her family, not everyone.
Her sister was a journalist, so she ended up just hours later, like after having been like dug out of rubble, she's reporting live from the scene. But her response is, oh my God, Facebook is so important.
Because people are posting and like doing community organizing to figure out who's safe, what resources need to be where via Facebook. And she's like, Facebook is amazing.
So she says on the one hand, Facebook was operating at every level, friend to friend, neighborhood to neighborhood. It was a way for the government to get messages to citizens and for communities to come together, but it all happened organically. And more than I care to admit, having Ruthie vanished from sight, I'm also reminded how short life is, how you don't want to die with regrets. She didn't want to regret never working on Facebook.
Yeah. So then finally Marnie calls her and she ends up interviewing for a job that is not the job she originally wanted. And then Marnie calls to offer her the job and she goes, well, which one? The one I pitched or the one you guys interviewed me for? And Marnie's like, well, which one do you want? She ends up taking the job she's inventing, manager of global public policy.
July 5th, 2011. She works in Washington, D.C., which is a very small office. And at this point, I mean, it's hard to remember that just, 13, 14 years ago, Facebook was still kind of this up-and-comer. It's hard to imagine it didn't have the presence it had.
Yeah. You know, she's never worked at a startup before. She's used to government. So she has a lot of faux pas at the beginning about etiquette.
She gets right to work having Mark meet global leaders. She's like, it's so important that he gets to know these people because she's thinking ahead and she's thinking as we come into each new territory, everyone's going to have their own set of laws. They're going to have their own set of regulations. We should be making nice with these global leaders so that they're nice back to us.
I understand the idealism. Mark is so disinterested in it. He's so short-sighted. He's so petulant almost. And it is her book and she hates him, but I feel like this lines up.
I guess what I'm thinking is this way of like, she knows that there's going to be problems because of him. Do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah. I think the thing I'll give her is she knows there's going to be problems and she wants to like work with them, not at them. Like she wants it to not be a violent asset. She wants to limit hate speech. She wants, you know what I mean? Like she wants to go into these places with cooperation because she knows that there will be problems, but not because she wants Facebook to be the problem.
Anyway, so the very first person that's in the office randomly happens to be the Prime Minister of New Zealand, who knows her sister because of the recent earthquakes. So she goes and gets Mark. It's impossible to get him to come. He gets there. He goes, well, I don't want to meet the New Zealand Prime Minister. The New Zealand Prime Minister is standing right there.
The next 100 pages are a lot of examples of times that she breaks her neck to set up these insane meetings with world leaders. And then Mark says something obnoxious or acts very flippant or is quite rude. And she is standing in the corner quaking with embarrassment. And he doesn't want to go over talking points. He'll never do a meeting before noon. There's just a lot of stuff where
he won't wear the outfit.
The most entitled person you've ever met in your life. And it worked. I don't know. His life carries on.
It's very understood in Facebook that Mark thinks that engineers are king, that all that matters is that the platform, I guess, functions from an engineering perspective. And then all of the soft stuff, like meeting a president or a prime minister, goes to Cheryl because that's beneath him. So Cheryl gets to meet this prime minister. The stern professional I had been briefing the day before has transformed into a celebrity. For all the times I've met Cheryl, it feels like this is the first time I'm really seeing her. She turns on the charisma and it transforms her from a normal-looking 40-something woman into someone genuinely glamorous. I swear, her hair, her eyes, her makeup, her skin, suddenly she positively glows. So again, as Ashley said, it's just example after example of all the horrible things that Facebook does. One of the big problem countries they have is Germany, because Germany is very strict about hate speech. And so they finally get a meeting with Angela Merkel, and Sheryl Sandberg's like, well, I'm Jewish, and the Holocaust. And everybody's like, okay, well, that was an awkward way to have a conversation. And then when Angela Merkel refuses to meet with Sheryl Sandberg again, Sheryl Sandberg takes this as a personal slight, and now Germany's persona non grata. But it's this weird thing where it's no one's allowed to bring up Germany to her because she'll have a meltdown and talk about how pissed off she is.
So she talks about how wealthy everyone at Facebook is, and especially in contrast to herself. Throughout this entire book, even after 7 years at Facebook, she's very adamant that everyone there...
Somehow everyone made a lot of money but her. And I'm like, well, girl, you were watching the end of the world. Why not negotiate?
Yeah.
Something interesting about early Facebook is that you get paid based on tenure. So there were assistants making more than their new bosses.
So she has a big trip with Cheryl to Switzerland. There's a huge economic conference there every year.
Davos, the World Economic Forum.
People know about that?
Mm-hmm.
Oh. Cheryl is a freak. She learns pretty quickly. As her employee, I fear I have no choice but to adapt to her routine, working with crushing intensity and sleeping only for a few hours between 1 a.m. and 5 a.m. One day I ask her about what we're all sacrificing for our jobs, family, hobbies, friends, anything that's not work. She seems surprised. But this is it. This is what I do, she says. I'm not going to learn the piano or run marathons or speak new languages. I'm not looking for hobbies. But what about friends, I counter. My heart is full, Sarah. I have wonderful friends, but they're in the thick of it too. I'm not looking for new friends. I'm all good. And she notices how much Facebook expects of its employees, but also that it's quote unquote generous. There is laundry on site where you just bring in your laundry and drop it off and they do your laundry for you. There are all these perks on site, as we've seen parodied the early tech perks.
Well, they're meant to keep you there. They're meant to be like, well, what is it that you would have to leave work to do? I guess everybody has to shower. Everybody has to eat. Everybody has to clean their clothes. So what if we did that for you? And then you never have to leave.
Yeah. As Mark declared in the little red book that every employee is handed when they're hired, our philosophy on perks is that we want to provide services that are utilitarian and help people with the things they need in order to help them focus on long-term goals. Everyone needs to eat. Everyone needs to do laundry. Everyone needs health services. Everyone needs to get to work. If we can make these parts of our lives easier, it helps us focus on what we're trying to accomplish at work, and it makes us all more productive. This was so fascinating to me because it's so interesting to like flat out address the way socialism works and then like only apply it to the most evil sectors of our society. It's so funny that they're like, no, these are useful things that literally make everyone's lives easier and better so that they can just like focus on useful things. However, it's only for people that are doing like internet crime.
A few weeks after she's there, they do come up with like a community guideline. So she is feeling like, okay, they're seeing what I'm seeing and they're coming around. We come up with Facebook's rules for dealing with law enforcement. What personal information will we give law enforcement access to? Under what circumstances? When one of the few older women on the team tells me I'm spending too much time at work and this is just a job, I honestly think she's the one who doesn't get it.
Each day, Facebook's policy team brings fresh chaos. Like every time there is a global conflict, there are elements of it that are happening via Facebook.
The Joseph Kony 2012 viral video, they're like, what should we do? There's all these problems. A rabbi posts that he's having coffee and a muffin in Israel, but Facebook's map says he's in Palestine. Things are getting dealt with one at a time.
There's no grand ideology here, no theory about what Facebook should be in the world. The company is just responding to stuff as it happens. We're managers, not world builders. Marnie just wants to get through her inbox, not create a global constitution. There's no bridging the gap in this perspective. So everyone there is just like, I don't know, whenever something's important, we'll deal with it. And she is so adamant that there are ways to anticipate and create policies around these things. And that is what her whole goal at Facebook was to do. And they're just not letting it happen.
They do allow her to have a summit, though. So they're going to have a summit. The company will develop a theory of how to be in the world. And so she shows up and she's so excited. There's 60 people there and she can't believe how quickly it coalesces around the idea that Facebook should support the military. It's being run by this new guy at Facebook named Joel Kaplan, who is a Harvard grad and ex-Marine who clerked after law school for Antonin Scalia and served as deputy chief of staff for George W. Bush. But really, the reason he's here is that he dated Cheryl in Harvard.
So now he's a pretty high up player on this team. So she is arguing, she's like, I don't think as a global company, us rallying behind the military is a good idea.
And he's like, everybody loves the vets. And she's like, okay, but what about countries that use like the military to do coups and incite violence and political force?
And he goes, well, what if we just focus on the US military? And she's like, okay, but do you want me to explain why Vietnam would not be so happy to celebrate the US military?
So then Cheryl's like, okay, well, I have a friend who does organ donations. So let's make it all about organs. I want an international push for organ donations. And Facebook will be a quasi-medical website. And so then she has to be like, okay, well, every country has a different law about organ donations. Also, that would mean that we have to have sensitive, like, data collection. We'd have to abide by HIPAA.
Also, just different cultures have different sensitivities around organ donation.
And Cheryl's like, I don't understand. Why can't we just do organ donation? And she goes, yeah, I want everybody's medical data. That's what Facebook should be used for. And Sarah's like, it just gets really complicated. And she keeps being like, well, can we just tell people to sign up for organs? And it's like one of those things where it seems like the people at the top are just saying shit.
At one point, Cheryl's like, okay, so you're telling me it would be illegal if my son needed a kidney. I can't just go to Mexico and get one. And Sarah's like, yeah,
of course not.
You just
because
can't
of
do
organ
that.
trafficking and stuff. She takes it really personally. She's like, how dare you tell me I can't just have what I want?
So then they go public.
So the real problem at Facebook is they're, quote unquote, they're running out of road. Once you hit 1 billion users, that seems like a huge, amazing mark. But for tech companies, it's all about potential growth. And once you have 1 billion people on your website, there's like not that many people left to get. Now they're in the business of getting people who don't have internet on Facebook and also getting people in countries like China and Russia on Facebook.
So now Mark has created the idea of this project called internet.org. Basically, he wants to create a global internet type service where they provide internet in areas that don't have it yet, but it's like a select few apps. So they want to go into these places and provide limited internet. And they're saying, it would make people want more internet, but really it's so that they can just get Facebook in these places.
So she thinks it's a great idea until all of these like watch groups come out and they're like, did you know these things. And when she hears these like a year later, she's like, oh, wait, is that true?
Yeah.
So I will say at first she's on board because this ties with her idealism. Like, it is great. Wouldn't it be great if everybody had internet? Because at first Mark Zuckerberg is suggesting that he personally is going to be paying for all of these low-flying drones to be shooting internet into like the depths of the Amazon rainforest.
Yes.
So their first target is Myanmar. And that's because Latin America is a bit tricky. They're getting pros and cons down there. Not everybody's for it. So they're like, all right, we'll go to Myanmar, see what happens.
We have to get the juntas on board, and they're like, okay, we got to send someone. And she's like, who? And she's like, oh, you meant me. Okay. So they send her there
by herself. I don't understand why she couldn't go with a single friend. It seems crazy that anybody would go to meet with the head of another government and like you wouldn't bring a second person.
She was there alone. She lands and finds out, oh, this is a place with no internet, so I can't use my internet.
Mm-hmm.
So she's fully off the grid. And she's there seemingly like with no plan. Like she lands and she's like, great, now I have to figure out how to get a meeting with the people in charge. And it's like, oh my God, you flew there with like no connection to anyone or anything.
So she gets herself into some conference where she figures like important people will be. She meets this woman who's this outspoken activist against the current regime and starts talking to her and be like, do you know how I get in touch with the heads? And she goes, this man here is a brilliant, wonderful man helping us bring democracy. And then she realizes that her quote unquote bodyguard, the guy standing behind this activist, is actually a member of the rival party who's in charge. That's basically has her under arrest all the time. That day, she goes home to her hotel and there's been a note slipped under her door being like, you can have a meeting with us tomorrow, 10 a.m. So now she has to figure out how to get to like the palace of Myanmar. She doesn't speak Burmese. Nobody speaks English. She doesn't have internet. She doesn't have a car. She's just hitchhiking alone. She gets in a strange man's car and through sign language is trying to explain what she means.
So she figures out how to get this man to get her to the government building. And finally, they have like a semi-productive meeting. She thinks maybe she's going to get kidnapped and killed. She gets home. She finally has a call from her husband who is like freaking the fuck out. And she's like, oh, sorry, there's no internet here. And my phone only gets ingoing calls, not outgoing calls. And he's like pissed off. And I'm like, oh man, he has every right to be pissed off. And she's like, he's also more mad than usual because I'm pregnant. And I was like, what do you mean you went here pregnant, you fucking psycho?
There's like a small war going on there. You went by yourself to a country where you don't speak the language. There's no internet access and you didn't even have a meeting or a game plan. You're getting in strange men's cars. Like, what are you doing?
Just don't do that.
It's just not worth it. This is why I'm like, I guess we do need religion. Like the fact that she was willing to put her body on the line for Mark Zuckerberg. I'm like, you needed to be told about God.
Yeah.
You needed to be in a church running bake sales.
That's so true. I guess I feel so sad because she is so resourceful and intense. And I really do think she wanted to do good in the world. And I feel that like had she landed somewhere where that was possible, she would have.
I guess it makes you question if there is anywhere possible because she.
Well, that's what I was thinking. I'm like, well,
she
where
tries
is
the political sector, she tries the private sector, and I do wonder if like there is no way to do good on a global basis. I don't know if she couldn't figure it out. I'm not smarter or more hardworking than her.
Like actually, she just needed to become like an assembly member.
She just needed to become like a crossing guard.
You can't save the world, but you can save this corner.
Oh, by the way, she like has a good meeting and goes home.
Yeah, it works. I don't know. She like has a good relationship with this government. Oh, when she was at the government building in Myanmar, they like locked away her passport for the duration of her meeting. I'm just like, have some fucking sense of survival skills.
So she says, yeah, during the lean-in era, all of the female employees at Facebook are expected to do admin work for Cheryl. And she says, no one ever explains why we have to help with the book. I guess it's too crude to tell us this because we share a gender. So she's like doing things like handing out name tags and like doing like press releases for the book.
I mean, she's traveling for press events because it looks good to have like a fairly high up pregnant employee next to her at all times. So instead of respecting her employee's body, she's like, oh, it'd be better if you did lots and lots of international travel with me while you're carrying this baby. She also learns a lot more about Cheryl during this time because she's traveling with her a ton to promote Cheryl's book. They're in Japan and Cheryl goes through like 3 makeup artists and just like breaks them down emotionally. And she's like, wait a second, is Cheryl a lunatic?
She also has this sense of entitlement. So the thing about Sarah is she's constantly pulling every professional string she has to get Mark Zuckerberg in front of heads of state. So she's pulled all these strings so that they can meet the prime minister of Japan. For some reason, Mark isn't going, but Cheryl's going. And Cheryl goes, oh yeah, can my parents come? They want to meet him too. She also says it's very important to Cheryl that one of the things that happens on this trip and this meeting with the prime minister of Japan is that he takes a photo holding her book.
And she's like, no, that's like disrespectful. And she like calls around to her former diplomat friends and is like, do people bring their parents to meetings like this? And they were all like, no.
And of course, the prime minister's office says they can't come. But Cheryl decides she'll simply hijack the prime minister with a presentation of the book at the end of the meeting. I'm carrying the book. I've added an inscription to the prime minister and his wife. It feels like smuggling illicit contraband, and I hate myself for being part of this. And at the end of the meeting, sure enough, they toss him the book basically and just really quickly snap a photo.
And the thing is, like, she acknowledges how fucked up it is what they're doing, but she just does it anyway. Like, she's the one who takes the photo. And I'm like, I don't know, man.
So then they're in the car going back, and Cheryl's parents and her kids are, of course, in Japan with them. And Cheryl starts screaming at her parents for letting the kids have McDonald's. And the parents were like, I don't know. They just wanted food that they recognized as home. And you had literally gone to the McDonald's headquarters in Japan that day and taken a photo with a chicken nugget. So we thought that meant it was okay. And she was like, what if someone sees them eating this disgusting food? They should never be allowed to eat. And she's like screaming. And Sarah's just like, what the fuck? Then the weirdest thing is they all fly back that night.
They fly back separately. So Sarah flies back to New York and Cheryl and her family are flying back to San Francisco. Another flight from Japan to San Francisco crashes.
Cheryl sends out this Facebook status update being like, we're so lucky we were on that flight. We were supposed to be on that flight, but last minute switched to a United flight instead. So she calls around and that's not true. Cheryl just like made that up. And she's like, what kind of psycho liar lies about supposed to have been on a plane?
Yeah, it was really bizarre.
Sarah then goes into labor, and as she's literally starting to push, feet in stirrups, Cheryl demands talking points for Davos. From the delivery bed, Sarah takes out her email and starts sending her the email.
One of the main talking points of Lean In was like, don't leave before you leave. Like, your maternity leave starts when you have a baby. Don't start backing out beforehand because it makes people think you're incompetent. And this really is so in her head. She's like, if I do not have a baby in my arms, I'm still working. And it's like, well, no, you're in active labor.
So she goes back to work essentially after 2 weeks. And when she accidentally says something about how hard it is to have a baby, Cheryl goes, hire a nanny, be smart, and hire a Filipina nanny. Sarah, I'm telling you, they're English-speaking, sunny disposition, and service-oriented.
I guess this is the real Lean In, the stuff Cheryl really believes about work and womanhood.
The expectation at Facebook is that mothering is invisible, and the more skilled you are, the more invisible it is. Months later, when the baby's rushed to the hospital in an ambulance, I don't mention it at the office for days. Then I only mention it in passing, assuring Marnie that it won't affect my work. She gives a couple examples of like, so the first time she leaves the baby alone with the nanny, she's in Mexico, and she's in a van with Mark Zuckerberg and 2 other really high up people. She gets a frantic call from from Tom, her husband, being like, I'm looking at the nanny cam. The baby's been alone for 20 minutes. And I can see on the nanny cam that a firefighter is now in the room. They can't get to the baby fast enough. They're like in a fucking panic, of course, because their baby is alone with a fireman in the apartment. It turns out what had happened was the nanny had gotten locked out because they have like cupboards in the hallway or something. But still, she accidentally says this to Mark, being like, sorry, I'm really stressed out. This just happened with my baby. It comes up in a review and they go, don't ever bother Mark with stuff like that. She also gets in a review that people are complaining that sometimes they can hear her baby in the background of her like phone calls. And she's like, well, that's because they call me at like 10 p.m. at night when I'm at home. And that's where the baby lives because she deals with Asia, Latin America. She works across all time zones.
Lean the fuck out, I suppose.
She also mentions that parents at work talk about how they don't allow their teens to have mobile phones, which only underscores how well these executives understand the real damage their project inflicts on young minds. Again, it's just this story after story of she's still breastfeeding. She's like 5 months postpartum, and they take her on a trip to Turkey, which is 12 hours. She brings her pump, but it turns out there's no outlets on the flight. So she's just like soaking in pain. Her breasts hurt. She finally gets to the hotel. There's a long line. She gets there. It doesn't work. She goes down to try to explain what's going on to the hotel staff. They send up a man, I think, to manually pump her. I couldn't figure out what was even to have sex with her.
Yeah.
Why would anybody ask a hotel staff? Like, I don't understand.
I don't either, but I think that that's what it was. And then she ends up finding a hand pump at a pharmacy. But it was like a very difficult experience that highlights why she wanted to be traveling less postpartum. And they were like, you sound stupid.
And then there's another time where they take her with like a cartel into Bogota or something. And they're like, be careful, you could get sniped. And she's like, again, it was so hard to pump.
This is, I guess, when she's just Stockholmed because it's not so evil yet.
Yeah.
But it is horrible working conditions. And I'm like, at what point do you feel like you're making progress towards helping the world?
And so much what her job is like prepping Mark culturally for these meetings that he absolutely refuses to be prepared for. He doesn't want anything longer than a text. You don't have to scroll. He won't learn how to bow. He won't wear the clothes they've gotten him. He won't show up on time.
I mean, he just is massively disrespecting world leader after world leader. It's no wonder he's in the Trump pocket now. I mean, they're very similar.
I mean, as she points out, he's had a lot of failures. For someone who's considered like the brilliant tech mind of our time, I do think something that is hopeful is that is clear that he has no next move.
Mm-hmm.
One of his big failures, internet.org, as you can tell, that didn't take off. And then he tried to come up with his own iPhone because they were so beholden to the Apple store and the Android store. They had something called Project Buffy. That obviously is a failure. She said even like the metaverse, how's that going?
Yeah.
I guess there was a Facebook crypto coin. I wonder how that's going. Now their big thing is AI.
Yay.
I know everybody's saying AI is the future, but they say a lot of things are the future. You don't have to believe it.
I mean, crypto. What the fuck is crypto?
I don't know, but it is just so funny. Like everyone buys into it because they can't be the people that didn't buy into it. But I don't know.
Yeah.
Like what is AI going to do for Facebook?
It's so interesting what they're trying with it and how unuseful it seems.
Korea has an open criminal investigation for them. So one of the big things that starts coming out is as they're expanding, they're breaking a lot of laws internationally. And some countries take it serious and some do not. So Brazil, you don't want to fuck with. Korea, you don't want to fuck with.
Yes.
Korea has an open investigation into Facebook because Facebook was supposed to rate its games like for ages 13 and up or whatever. And they just never did it. So now they're worried that if they go to Korea, they could credibly be arrested.
I mean, there's an open warrant for Mark, Cheryl, a couple other members of the executive team.
So they want to test it. They don't want to send one of their people over there. So they say in a meeting, we need a body to arrest to call their bluff. It's breathtaking to me how casually leadership speaks of employees being jailed as if it's a fact of life like taxes.
So they're planning
of course, that's something they try to avoid.
Yeah. So they're planning this big Asia tour where they go to a bunch of Asian countries. And one of them is going to be South Korea, but they need to make sure that on the ground, the entire team is not going to be arrested. So they're like, who can we send first? They're like, well, Sarah.
So this is one of the trips they sent her on pregnant is they're like, hey, we want to make sure sweet baby Mark Zuckerberg doesn't get arrested for something he fully did illegally that he could fix easily.
Tom is like, you have to fight this.
He's like, you can't just like get arrested in a foreign jail with child.
She says it honestly had not occurred to me that I could say no. It feels like it would be easier to negotiate with the Korean authorities for my freedom than it is to like negotiate with her bosses to not have to go. Finally, she's able to get them to see that she is one of the people whose main job it is to negotiate with like international policies. So she shouldn't be the one in jail. She should be doing work on international policies.
They send some other woman because, of course, it's going to be a woman. So they send a woman. She doesn't get arrested. And then they send Cheryl and Mark and everybody. They go, okay, I guess the coast is clear.
So they go on this big trip. At first, she doesn't even want to fly.
You know what's so funny?
Huh.
Is like it would be so badass for one of them to get arrested.
I know. So she's on a private jet doing a big tour with Mark and the gang. She's so embarrassed by him. She talks about his pasty white body a lot. She talks about how much of a kind of boring limp dick loser he is. She
goes on this big Asia trip with him where they're there for 3 weeks. They go to a bunch of countries. And on the first weekend, they're in this giant suite. She's in hotels. She didn't even know they could be this big. She's like, I didn't know mansions were this big. I didn't know hotel suites could be this big. And something about Mark is he loves to play board games and he doesn't know that everybody's always letting him win. And when she brings it up, like, oh, they're letting you win, he seems genuinely shocked and appalled.
And I guess my question is, how smart do you have to be to get to the point where you can be so stupid and no one will tell you?
Okay, I think it's like your belief in how smart you are. I think if you really do believe that you're a genius, and there's been some like credible evidence to it, like you are deeply successful, I think it would seem very obvious to you how to win a board game and not to anybody else. But you know how they're like, the smartest gorilla can read as good as a 3-year-old. You know what I mean? And like to me, if I was beating a gorilla at an essay writing competition, I'd be like, well, of course, hands behind my back. It would never even occur to me that that gorilla was like going easy on me.
Right.
And I think that that is how Mark Zuckerberg sees the world. I think he sees himself as like so exceptional.
Yeah.
That when he looks and sees that people are obviously doing bad moves, the most reasonable explanation is that it's because he's so smart, he's playing 4D chess, and these idiots like don't even know what's good for them.
Yeah. It seems that he had one good idea one time, like him and Elon Musk. I'm like, how did we get to this place in the world, I'm saying, where people who have one good idea 25 years ago get to be the richest people that everyone lets win? At what point was it stoppable? Like, when was it still not an unstoppable force? And like, could
I guess
anything
here,
have been
when
done?
this girl Sarah was there, and instead of stopping him, she was like introducing him to the president of Japan.
Okay. Yeah.
I think in these years, when she was looking and saying, wow, you're on the brink of being a giant global political platform and tool, let's start thinking about that. If she had actually gone to these countries and like begged them to regulate, they could have been stopped. Because there are countries that turn him down and shut him. Like, you know what I mean? With the internet.org thing, the countries came together and didn't let him go.
Yeah.
He has failed ideas because people shut him down in his tracks regulation style. And I think if this woman, Sarah, had instead of helping him beat these regulations, helped the regulators, it could have been different.
Dang.
I mean, we keep talking about it, but later there's like a genocide in Myanmar that is fueled and completely like carried out because of Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
And she went to Myanmar to make that happen.
Yeah.
She brought Facebook to Myanmar.
Yeah.
Personally. As we said, there wasn't even a second person on her trip. She hitchhiked to the head of communications in Myanmar and like begged them to let Facebook come to that country.
And when that genocide was at a point where it still felt like stoppable.
She was watching asking people via email to shut it down.
Yeah. And instead of doing anything herself, like escalating anything outside of traditional order of operations, she just was like, well, they wouldn't stop it.
She kept saying, I was sending all the emails I could. Something fun Mark says to her is that he doesn't know if he'll be around for the birth of his first child with Priscilla. And when she says, why? What else do you have that's more important? He says, I'm not sure yet, but something could come up. So that's the kind of guy he is. He later says he wants to have a tribe of children.
The other thing that's so interesting is Priscilla's response, where she, it seems, does not argue with him saying something could come up. She just says, like, you can do whatever you want. I just fear you might regret that someday.
So then they're in Jakarta, and Jakarta recently had like a democratically elected outsider carpenter, it sounds, become president. And he's considered like the first Facebook president. And he's so excited to meet them because he's like the first guy that was able to get information out there that like were beyond the typical channels. And through Facebook and through like this organic use, he was able to override kind of the domineering government. Mark is stoked. He sees how much charisma and fame this guy has. Like this president keeps going and meeting the people wherever they live. He does these like walkabouts and people love him. And she's like, something changed in Mark. He like sees the power and the potential and the fame that comes with this and the attention. And she's like, he looks electrified.
He specifically requested a small riot. He wanted like a hubbub about him. And they end up, you know, kind of being in the middle of one that is not the one she planned. It just like was a riot. He loves it.
I think it's important to note that his favorite president is Andrew Jackson, a big genocider. I guess there are signs that Facebook could be helpful because around this time they go back to Japan and the prime minister of Japan appreciates their like marked safe tool because of what she had experienced with the earthquake. I think she pushes for these kind of natural disaster information spreaders. And because of the tsunami in Japan, they are like, oh, this is like a very helpful use.
Mm-hmm. So at this point, Mark is very intent on getting into China. And there is a lot of very fucked up conversations with the Chinese government about how they might be able to agree on something. And at one point, they have to be like, hey, Mark, what you want to do right now is very Nazi adjacent.
This is July 2014. Google has already withdrawn from China years before, saying it was no longer willing to continue censoring Google products following the breach of human rights activists' accounts on its service. A lot of the American tech companies, including Yahoo, have been really condemned for going along with the Chinese government. And it seems that Mark is not addressing any of this head on. He's just saying, we need to go there to expand, whatever it takes. And everyone's like, what do you mean, whatever?
So at this point, Marnie leaves the company to go work at Instagram. And with the reshuffling, she is now directly under Joel, who is the Republican who used to date Cheryl. And Joel is a bumbling idiot. One of his first things now in the policy sector is that he wants to establish PACs outside of the US. He goes, we should have done this a long time ago. Like, why don't we have PACs to influence these elections? And she has to sit there and be like, oh, because that's so illegal for us to do that. And he's like, oh, really?
Yeah, he was somebody who testified under oath that he did not partake in the Brooks Brother riots in Florida, and then later would like have a beer and recollect about how fun it was to be a part of them. Around this time, she starts detailing a bunch of instances, like with Russia. When do you take a page down? When do you leave it up? And it's a delicate balance. A lot of these countries basically say, if you don't take down the pages we tell you to, we'll shut down Facebook in the whole country. What they're doing now is they're saying, fine, then shut down Facebook. But now they've unfortunately told all these countries that the way to get our attention is to shut down Facebook. So it's like they want to do free speech, but they also don't want to like be working with these governments. And
so with Marnie, they had painstakingly crafted a very lengthy community guidelines outline that dictated what stays up and what gets taken down. And now it's moved to this kind of situation where it gets decided by Mark. Like,
he personally decides what's okay and what's not okay.
It just gets escalated to Mark, and who cares about the community guidelines? And Mark's number one thing is like expanding Facebook and growing. So he is basically just doing whatever will get Facebook the most potential users, which means placating the governments of giant countries like Russia.
She talks about one Davos where she brings her baby because her husband also had to go to Davos as a journalist. And she's like, the only thing to do is bring a nanny and the baby. The baby's sick. And here she is sick. And that guy Joel buys a pair of cowboy boots that he loves. And he texts her at 1:30 a.m. being like, I lost my boots. You have to go find them. And she's like, I can't believe I'm on my knees at 2 a.m. Well, it's my baby's birthday and she's sick. And I'm crawling in coat check looking for this man's boots.
And I'm like, well, why are you?
Exactly. I am like, well, yeah. I'm sorry. You're like a high level Facebook executive. You're on private jets with Mark Zuckerberg, handling his interactions with like global rulers. Why are you on your hands and knees in coat check at 1:30 a.m. on your sick baby's birthday? Like, have some goddamn self-respect. It's insane.
Stuff like this. There were obviously much more egregious stories throughout this book. This book is insane. But things like that, when she just kind of would go with it, I was like, this is when you look for a new job. This is when you go. Because later, when things escalate to a head, she's always got a reason why she can't look for a new job at this point. And even if at this point she still thinks that Facebook has the opportunity to do good, surely it can't be the only place where she can do good. And she is being so horrifically she's being abused there. It's very difficult to reconcile kind of her actions throughout this book because obviously Facebook is so evil and it's very interesting to have it laid out in this very specific way. But also I kind of want to be like, I don't know, get out. Like, leave, bitch. What are you doing?
So she is helping to build internet.org by getting Mark Zuckerberg into all these important conferences with global leaders. He really wants the Obamas to like him, but she can't get him that far. And there seems to be between 2013 and 2016 this slow movement to the front where at first he's not allowed on the stage with true global leaders. He's like at the heads of state dinner, but he doesn't have a seat type thing. To by 2016, especially after Trump's elected, they're sucking up to him. So there's once Trump gets elected via Facebook, it's a whole different ballgame for Mark Zuckerberg. But there's a lot of time where she's getting him to meet the president of Brazil. He's late to meet the president of Brazil. He can't believe the Brazilian president won't insult internet.org. He always wants the Obamas to go look at Machu Picchu with him. And the Obamas are like, yeah, obviously not, loser.
We're busy. We're the Obamas.
I mean, she tells this story where she knows she looks bad, but I'm like, no, do you know it in your soul? Because she's trying to get him to the best spot at the UN. She gets him the best talking slot she can. And he then turns it down because he says it's too early. He won't wake up that early for the UN, which she sees as a joke. And then she bumps Big Bird at the Global Citizens event so that he can speak there. And then she tries to get him a meeting with the Pope. And she like is outraged that the Pope won't. And I'm just like, lady, stand down.
Yeah, I guess I want to be like, how many times do you have to get stung before you like stop jumping into a nest?
At this point, I'm still a true believer in Facebook's mission to change the world.
Why? I think this is where the book was hard for me is because I feel at the beginning, it was quite clear how she believed Facebook could change the world. But after a couple years on the inside, the way her job was treated, the way everyone acted, I'm like, I actually need you to outline for me why you still believed that.
So at this point, human rights groups are coming to Facebook being like, here's the problem with internet.org is actually not bringing free internet to people. It's bringing this like low level free apps. And one of the apps is Facebook, but because they can't do real Facebook, it's all text based. And because it's like using as little internet as possible, they don't have two-factor authentication. There's also like no way to check information. And so basically what it turns out this is doing is like putting the worst version, the worst, least moderated, most hackable version of Facebook into the hands of the most vulnerable.
It like hugely violates net neutrality. It hugely violates anything that exists to protect people with internet stuff.
Yeah, it really does just take people who have never had any internet to access and giving them like a fucked up Facebook only version of low level internet that could make them very easy to scam, trick, hack into, steal from. It's shitty. And when she realizes it, she's like, oh, these are really good points. And they're like, shut the fuck up, Sarah. And she's like, no. Around this time, Uber is in its ascent. And what they're doing is they're buying off foreign leaders by paying for their kids' soccer teams. They're like mobilizing their employees to protest.
Meanwhile, Mark believes in handling foreign policy by deciding that anyone who isn't just like 10 toes down pro Facebook is an adversary. So he believes in fighting foreign governments tooth and nail.
He's like looking at what Uber is doing and then going, they're using Street Fighter tactics. Why aren't we doing that? Why aren't we buying off Brazilian soccer teams?
So now India wants to ban Facebook, and they utilize everything within Facebook to like mobilize every Indian Facebook user to send an email on behalf of Facebook.
I mean, she's really outraged by this, but I'm like, well, duh. She finds out that Mark and Cheryl are faking all of the engagement on their Facebook.
Yeah.
She's like, oh my God, they don't really have that many friends.
They don't really get
She goes,
all
"Wait,
those likes and comments.
they're gaming the system? Why, no offense, but why else would you build a Facebook situation unless you could game the system and get the most likes?
Especially
I mean, that
because
feels...
historically Facebook is about making Mark Zuckerberg feel sexy.
So now politicians are coming to Mark Zuckerberg because of Brexit. They're coming to him and being like, hey, we're noticing that what's happening on Facebook is really changing the Brexit vote. They're not alone. More and more politicians are explicitly requesting that Facebook put its thumb on the scale. The causes range from re-election to indigenous broadcasting content, but the expectation is clear. Some are less delicate than others and accompany the request with a threat to regulate if the request is refused. All the requests speak to the changing power dynamics. So basically, he is now in a position where countries are coming to him and saying, we could shut you down right now unless you help us with our goals. It feels at this point the heads of state and Mark Zuckerberg are evenly matched. Like, they could shut him down,
but he could also
help keep them in power.
So at this point, Sarah, I think this is when she's pregnant with her second baby, is hugely pregnant. She has to go to Davos again. They're on the flight back and she's doing all these meeting notes, sending out tons of emails. And Cheryl goes, come to bed with me. And she's like, what the fuck are you talking about? And she just refuses it. And after the flight, Cheryl is like, you should have come to bed, and kind of is icy towards her forever.
And she keeps telling this to people, being like, can you believe Cheryl invited me to her bed? And her assistant Debbie's like, oh yeah, everyone slept in that bed. That's just her thing. And Cheryl has these young women that work for her that really idolize her. And one of them had recently gotten $3,000 worth of lingerie from Cheryl and gone to Cheryl's house and tried on all the lingerie for her. And they're always sitting in each other's laps. And she often goes to bed. When she says no, how about Sadie? She goes, Sadie already slept over last night.
I think this is like a power dynamic thing of just like being able to control these like young, beautiful women.
So that guy, Joel, by the way, is more and more kind of like saying creepy things. She's taking a citizenship test and he goes, oh, they always ask about the dirty Sanchez. So she Googles what that is. And it's like a sex thing.
There's a lot. He's a fucking weirdo.
He sucks and he's a creep and he's gross and he now works for Trump. And like, I hate him. When you're like, yeah, they were doing genocides gleefully and
he was a pervert.
And he made me Google dirty Sanchez. I am like, well, that's...
If that was the main thing, I'd be like, that's really bad. But everything else that was happening was so bad.
Yeah.
Also, every time he does something weird and pervy, she tries to escalate it and is told to like not.
Mm-hmm.
And like never learns her lesson about it either. She's like, surely they care about women in the workplace.
It's funny because now we're in this weird era where there's terrorism. And on the one hand, countries are like, we're worried that terrorists are being radicalized on Facebook. But on the other hand, Facebook is like, terrorism is so good for us because it makes countries want more surveillance, which means that people's personal privacy rights are out the door. So good, keep the terrorism up. Ironically, Sheryl Sandberg like loves terrorism. She gets some feedback that she needs to be better at holding a poker face. And she's like, can you give me an example of when? They go, well, when we were in the board meeting of Facebook board executives and they suggested we cozy up to far-right nationalists in Germany who are explicitly anti-Semitic, and people like Sheryl Sandberg went, yeah, that would be good for business. We should help them out if they're going to win the election. You can't sit there and roll your eyes.
Oh.
They go, you can have your thoughts, but don't roll your eyes. Anyway, Sheryl Sandberg hates anti-Semitism unless it's going to immediately benefit her stock options, in which case she will install an explicitly anti-Semitic leader.
Your mouth to Hitler's ears.
Okay, so then, by the way, it finally happens. Somebody in Brazil gets arrested on behalf of Facebook. He's a WhatsApp employee, and they arrest him because he won't hand over encrypted texts between drug dealers who have murdered people. And like this guy has threatened to kill this judge, and they won't hand over the text, which I don't know, whatever. I'm not going to get into, I don't care. But what matters is that the only way to get him out of jail is to say actually Facebook and WhatsApp are two different companies, even though they're owned by the same person. And instead of doing this, Mark Zuckerberg posts a heartwarming story where he goes, "Our wonderful employee Diego has stood up for the community rather than hand over your data. He's keeping us safer every day." And she's like, I mean, ironically, he is protecting a drug dealer who has murdered people, but is that keeping a community safer? But then she's like, also in doing so, Mark pretty much throws out any chance that the lawyer has of being like, they're two separate companies. Later, when she brings Diego to meet Mark literally doesn't know who he is. And when he's reminded, like, oh, this is the guy that went to jail for your company.
Mark is like, oh my God, cool. Anyway, I'm busy.
Yeah.
She is appalled by how little the executive team gives a shit about Diego. She's like, I can't believe the way that they're just gambling with just a guy's life like this. And she realizes, she goes, I have to leave Facebook. I start calling around and looking for a new job. For so long now, I've been able to convince myself that I can do more good inside Facebook than outside. But now I understand I probably can't. But she's pregnant and she's about to give birth. She's like, it's just such a bad time for me to find a new job.
She goes, what am I supposed to find a new job while pregnant? I can't.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, so hold out for a couple weeks. But then you won't be pregnant eventually, right? Wrong. Okay, so she has this baby, and I have to say, something really horrible happened. She has something called an amniotic embolism, and they can't stop her bleeding, and she almost dies. They have to transfer her to another hospital, and she's like in a coma for 4 days. And then she says they had to give her like literally gallons and gallons, like 30 blood infusions. They couldn't get the bleeding to stop. She doesn't stop bleeding for the next year.
I mean, she feels like so physically weak for a very long time, and they're still sending her on all these international trips, like immediately postpartum. So she has the baby, she goes into a coma. Then obviously her postpartum period is very treacherous because not only is she recovering from just like general childbirth, she also had 40 blood transfusions and was in a coma.
During maternity leave, Joel presses me to join a leadership offsite in India. And she's like really stressed out about going because what if she dies on the plane? It's a 24-hour flight. And so she writes to HR, and the HR lady goes, well, what if I sat with you on the flight so you're not alone? And she goes, well, what the fuck would you do for me if I start bleeding out on a flight? Like,
because she's also like bleeding a lot still. Like she's bleeding all the time.
And then she tries to be like, by the way, Joel really freaks me out. He keeps taking our video calls from bed with his boxers on, and he keeps asking me where I'm bleeding from. She's bleeding from the vagina. She just gave birth. And he keeps being like, no, where are you bleeding from? And then like making her explain how breastfeeding works to him. Cause she's like, I don't really want to travel that much until I'm done breastfeeding. And he's like, well, how does breastfeeding work? And she's like, I don't really want to explain it to you.
He's just a freak and a pervert. And she reports everything. Like at one point they go, okay, well, if you want us to do an investigation, you have to press go on this investigation. And the higher up, Elliot, kind of takes her aside and is like, hey, listen, if you do this investigation,
you're fired.
You're fucked. And she goes, so if I say stop, you can make sure he stops. And Elliot was like, yeah, of course. And of course not.
Anyway, she comes back to work. They've been bugging her whole maternity leave. They want her to do all this travel. She shows up. The first day she comes back, she has a review of her time on maternity leave. And of course, she Googles it, and it's like illegal to review somebody's time on maternity leave. But he tells her that she's on performance review watch because she was so hard to get a hold of, and people found her to be like spotty during her maternity leave. And she's like, well, I was in a coma. And later they claim that before she left for maternity leave, she wanted to be kept in the loop. So they were like, you can't blame us for emailing you during your maternity leave. And she goes, well, that was before I was in the coma.
Yeah.
I didn't know I'd be in a coma. I do think, good warning to women, don't tell them keep me in the loop because they'll use that against you.
So there are really heavy concerns about the way Facebook is playing a role in elections. And this is just before the 2016 election. Regimes that want to control and censor their populations now understand the power of Facebook to monitor what's being said about them and who's saying it. In the Philippines, someone wins an election using paid ads and a network of social media volunteers. His campaign chips away at the facts with political pages masquerading as credible sources of information to pump out half-truths. So they're sitting there being like, we need to understand the way Facebook is manipulating elections, especially going into this election where Hillary Clinton is up against Donald Trump. Like, what is happening?
So the way Facebook ad revenue works is that I guess the more engagement you get on a post, the cheaper they are. So it actually rewards more inflammatory engagement getting content. We charge less money for ads that are more incendiary and reach more people. Trump is using our system the way it's designed to be used. she tries to explain that to them. They're like, hey, by the way, like Trump is putting out a lot of targeted fake ads. And Joel's like, who cares? Clinton's going to win anyway. So let's make the money. Joel was one of the guys who spearheaded the idea that the policy team should also be lining the pockets of Facebook. He was the first one that's like, I don't want to be some like cash loss center. I want to figure out how our policy can make money.
So it turns out this whole it doesn't matter, Hillary's going to win anyway thing. Big time not true.
They have this like town hall meeting to get everybody to talk about how they're feeling, which she's surprised by. But it turns out it's only because after the Brexit vote, there was such a scandal and there was such an outburst in England that they've learned. A lot of people show up and they're like, well, I'm worried about my black and brown friends. And she's like noticing for the first time, it's mostly white and Asian here.
Yeah, so there are like young people at Facebook sobbing into their computers, and Joel has a big old smile on his face because he is loudly and proudly a Republican. Joel shuts down the concerns and states firmly there are a lot of good guys in the Trump administration who want to do what's best for America.
So she happens to be going to Peru with Mark Zuckerberg at this point. So she's on a private jet when she's watching Mark be like, how dare they blame me for this? I didn't do this. The media just wants a scapegoat because they suck at their jobs and they're dying and they're poor and they're just mad because I'm so rich. So then Elliot, his second in command, goes, well, let me explain to you how actually we did make Trump win. And then he goes through point by point how Trump's like head social media guy parsed scale. So basically what he did is he used the fact that on Facebook, you can like really target specific people. So he essentially built out what a Trump voter looks like, from their facial recognition to the kind of truck they drive to what they're most interested in. And he targeted ads at them specifically using lies.
So he parsed out like hundreds of different like verticals of what certain types of potential and existing Trump supporters might look like, and then used the information, like the lies and the headlines that would draw them in and then like leaned them further and further into the Trump campaign.
So he did very like single issue voters. And then as deterrence, he would use these things called dark posts, which is like, for some reason on Facebook, you're allowed to do posts that you can pay for that both the administration of the page and other people can't see. So you can target individuals with posts made just for them that nobody else even knows exist.
Like going after the Bernie bros and being like, listen, what they did with Bernie was fucked up, so you shouldn't vote for Hillary at all.
Going after black voters and listen, quoting fucking Hillary Clinton. They couldn't have quoted her if she hadn't said what she said about super predators. So that's on the Democratic Party for picking a woman with a racist history in politics. But at the same time, like they brilliantly used the tools that Facebook had created to target individuals, use all the data, and then also make like millions of little tweaks to like what colors work, what words work. And then every time they learned, like proliferate. So they said by the end of the election, they had sent out literally millions of different personally targeted ads at people, which then were allowing for donations. The majority of the money that Trump got came from Facebook donations that were like targeting people specifically. So Mark hears this and Cheryl hears this and their response is, wow, brilliant. Good for them. They really did it.
Yeah. Cheryl's like, I wonder if we could get that guy to come work for us.
And then she goes, we could never. He probably has any job he wants. So Sarah's like, aren't you worried that they're spreading misinformation and we're not checking it? And they go, lie all you want, baby. Just keep spending the money.
So they land at this conference in Peru, and suddenly world leaders are very interested in Mark Zuckerberg. This is the first major world conference they've been to. I mean, it's right after the 2016 election. And because it's viewed as the Facebook election internally and globally,
suddenly he's seen as a kingmaker. Basically, they're realizing that they need Mark Zuckerberg to help any leader who wants to get reelected. And she says there's this moment of Mark is in the middle of this circle of like the prime minister of Canada, of Brazil, of Mexico, of all these countries. And he's realizing, oh, I'm going to outlast all of them. They have 4-year terms and they need me to get a second 4-year term. But in 8 years, I'll still be here and they won't be. I'm the king. And so he's like checked out thinking about this. And then he gets to meet Obama. He stands up the president of Brazil, I believe, to go meet Obama in a casual chat. And it turns out Obama yells at him and is basically like, you need to clean this up. This is so dangerous. You can't let your website become this misinformation spreader. It's like causing racism and hate speech. Like you have to make sure people can't lie on your website.
And Mark is incensed that Obama has the fucking nerve.
He keeps being like, that lame duck. I don't even want to go to Machu Picchu with him anymore. He's a lame duck. He has no power. How dare he? And she's like, oh, he's never received real feedback before. So the combination of finding out how much power he has, and then she thinks also the idea that like he's like, who's Obama to talk to me like that? Literally the president of the United States, but whatever. So now they're in this car and suddenly Mark like doesn't really care about the misinformation. He's just going off about how the media is just jealous. And you know what? He's going to start his own media company and he's going to destroy the media game as we know. He's going to make sure there's no newspapers left. And actually Facebook is going to have its own media. And all of the news in the world is not only going to be created by Facebook, but shared on Facebook. And there's going to be no outside sources. And then he goes, my personal project this year is I want to go to a bunch of states. And she goes, what states? And he goes, Ohio, Pennsylvania, South Carolina,
Iowa. I want to go to Iowa first. And Sarah she's like, he's about to run. Like he is sitting here saying, if I could make Trump president, why can't I make me president? She's freaking the fuck out. And everyone is like, oh, well, nothing we can do about it.
And he does it. I mean, he's doing the stops. He's eating fried butter in Iowa. He's going to a black church in South Carolina. He's meeting with the leaders. He's kissing babies. He's learning to ride farm stuff, things that you have at a farm. I don't know, like a conveyor belt, I suppose. I don't know.
Over the last 5 years, I feel I've seen him face so many choices and lose touch with whatever fundamental human decency he had when we started. Do I say that? How can I say any of these things to him?
Then she's on a plane coming back from Davos again. She's always at Davos. Davos is a year-round thing, I guess. She's with Cheryl and the women's march has just happened. And she's telling Cheryl, who she thinks is a pro-woman lady, right? Lean in. She's like, guess what? All these women are fighting for their rights. And Cheryl doesn't give a fucking fuck. She just goes, what did Melania wear to the inauguration? That's all she cares about.
So at this point, she's like, oh, I need to leave this job. But after her second baby, her body, she is kind of fucked. Like she is.
Well, I don't know, man. She's like, I need the insurance. Why doesn't your husband have a job? Why don't you go back to New Zealand where you probably have universal health care? Why don't you go back to England where your husband has universal? Like, this thing where she's like, now I have a new reason I can't leave.
That's what I'm saying, is I'm saying she is, it seems, quite sick. It seems she's not doing well. Like she's no longer pregnant, but she is, in her opinion, too sick to be without her own health insurance. I don't know. There's always a thing. Like there's always something holding her there.
And she's never talking. So one time she talks about money in this book and it's that she gets paid out every 4 years. And she never really talks about how much money she's making. But I am like, have you made no money? Why don't you have any money? You're a top dog at Facebook. Why don't you have money?
Why isn't your base salary kind of good? Like at one point she talks about the house they live in San Francisco. And she's like, well, we only moved here because Mark made me move here. And if I don't get the stock options, she's like, we bought this house because I was relying on those stock options and we don't want to go back to renting. And I was like, I don't care. I don't know.
I understand the insurance thing. We're two American women. Trust us, we get it. Why doesn't your husband have a job? Why? And also this way that she's like, I've tried to look for a job. You have introduced Mark Zuckerberg to the head of all countries of the world, except for China. He can not get China. Why is that resume not that you can get any other job? You can get a second. No other person will try.
I just feel that she won't admit how much she revels in her proximity to power.
Yeah. And that also like her need to be told she's doing a good job overrides her understanding that what they're doing is like literally causing death.
Yeah. Like so literally.
So now they're trying to get into China. I can't even, dude. Okay, long story short, guess what? They've sold all of your data to China. They're telling China they can have whatever they want. They're doing all these backdoor policies. Basically, everything they said to the government in their hearings was a dead lie. They just have decks. They have straight up decks being like, our strategy is to tell America one thing and then tell China a different thing. China can have all of the data. We will do anything they want from an authoritarian censorship situation. And there's these things called like point of power where basically, you know, to get from the US to China is a long way, right?
So there's mini servers.
So there's mini servers on the, so it's basically all Chinese data should be saved in a server in China. All US data should be saved in a server in the US. And then the Facebook policy is we only keep servers where we believe the government would never ask us for the information. However,
China's like, you can't be in China. Like Facebook is banned in China unless we have access to whatever the fuck we want. And they're like, totally, bro. Let's get this going.
But not only that, they have access to these point of power servers. So that means if you sent something to France and it stopped in Lithuania, whatever, they have access to those middling ones. So they do have access to US data.
And the other thing is Facebook, in trying to get into China, is building other apps that they're seeding into China that just don't have the name Facebook on them. So they are illegally operating in China when they're not allowed to be in China. They're doing all these deals with the Chinese government that they are patently not allowed to do. All of the things that they've said no to every other government for, they are agreeing to in China.
And they also are like, so anybody who goes against us is a terrorist. By the way, the Chinese are currently genociding the Uyghurs. So like, they're not doing good things right now. And if you were to stand up and say that's bad, they would be able to shut you down. That's also why you really shouldn't be buying from Temu or Shein. If you don't want to buy clothes made by literal slave labor, it's not just about like getting shitty quality stuff. Why is that shirt $1? Because the labor is forced.
That's true.
I feel like it's weird that people don't know that. I think it's so weird that people never ask themselves, why can something come from China and cost $1?
Yeah. So now she's trying to hire someone to manage the situation in Myanmar. And what is the situation there, you might ask? Well, because internet.org
Actually did take off there.
kind of worked, now this entire country that 5 years ago she was in and had no internet, now they do have internet, but their internet is Facebook centric. So essentially everyone there has Facebook and almost no other access to the internet. So everything, all internet communication there is happening via Facebook. And the internet communication that is happening there is violent hate speech and terrorism that has led to a genocide.
Yeah, so there's two groups. There's two primary groups in Myanmar. It's like the Buddhist Burmese and then the Muslim Rohingya. And there has just been horrible like hate and violence inflicted against the Rohingya. And in 2014, incited by a made-up Facebook post, riots broke out, and there was what has been deemed by the UN a full genocide where 10,000 Muslims were murdered in cold blood in the streets. And this post was inciting these specific riots. And she got word of it. And she had been telling Facebook for a while, we need somebody to be monitoring this. We need somebody to be monitoring this. That she was getting ignored. Finally, they hired somebody in Ireland or something.
They had like a contractor in Ireland who hired a contractor who spoke Burmese.
And it turned out one of those Burmese guys was in fact a deeply racist, like genocidal person. So he was leaving up all the pro-hate comments and like taking down any peaceful organization comments. They were also taking all the secret Facebook groups of people trying to bring peace and using that information to like kill them. So she's seeing this thing go viral. She's desperately calling the people in Ireland and being like, can you please call the person in Burma? They're like, he's out to dinner. He can't help. And she's like, well, we need to take down this post. And they're like, we're reading it and it doesn't look like it violates any of the terms of services. And she goes, the people I know in Myanmar are begging me to take this down because people are being slaughtered in the street.
Our terms of service are people going to be harmed by this, and people are already murdered because of it.
And they're like, I don't know, we can't really tell what these things say because Google doesn't translate from Burmese to English. So we're just like not sure. That guy said it was fine. It turns that guy was like actively using slurs and stuff against the people who were being. So she, for like hours, is like just calling and emailing and being like, hey guys, can you take this post down? And they're like, we can't. This is where I am like, why did you not show up at fucking Sheryl Sandberg's office like with a gun and be like, you had to take this? Like, do you know this idea?
Yeah, that's what I mean. Is like walk into the server room at Facebook with a gun and just shoot all the servers.
I understand that she seems to be the only person who cared at this point, but I am like, it didn't seem like you were willing to break protocol in any way to save thousands and thousands of people.
Yeah.
Like you were the good guy with an email, I guess. And like she just kept emailing. But I think at some point you have to be like, I guess I have to elevate this to somebody who can do something right now. Anyway, finally they get it taken down. And when she like reports the complaint, they do an internal investigation and go, we followed all the rules. We did a great job. Nothing was wrong. Actually, you're overreacting.
Yeah.
She at this point is like, well, now I really have to go. She doesn't go.
She's like, I started making calls.
She goes, you'll never believe what happened next. She goes, something even worse. I went to some party that Facebook threw and Joel showed up and he said I was sultry. And that to me was the last straw. I'm like, sultry?
Also, it wasn't the last straw.
Yeah, it wasn't.
So at one point also, Facebook gets in a lot of trouble for targeting vulnerable teens. They have a lot of ways of tracking like teenagers who are depressed and insecure, and they sell that to advertisers and then they get in trouble for it. And they say, no, we don't. And she's like, yes, we do. That's our whole marketing plan. Like, that's how we sell ads. We go, look, we can sell to a depressed.
It's in their deck. Anyone they're pitching to, they're like, by the way, if you want to find a teenager who thinks she's so ugly she's about to kill herself, we could give you the lipstick ad that'll turn things around. And so then, of course, Facebook lies to everybody and says, that's not true. We've never done that. And she's like, stop lying. I guess she waited for the book deal. Good for her. Everybody waits for the book deal.
And the thing is, people at Facebook are not happy now. Like, it used to be this like hopeful, exciting place. And she has noticed since the Trump election that there's like a real divide between the leadership and the lower level employees where they're all pissed about the sexual harassment and they hate.
Not all of them. The boys aren't.
The boys aren't.
The 20 girls that work at Facebook are like, I wish you would stop sexually harassing us. And they go, we wish you would stop bringing it up. And actually, at a fireside chat, that shuts it down. They go, can't you just get back to work and stop talking about diversity? And the women are like, okay.
At one point, the women are like, we need to stop being sexually harassed. And so they create this system where men who speak up against sexual harassment.
Other men can give men ally badges.
Yeah.
If a man sees another man doing something good, he can give him an ally badge. And then the more ally badges he has, the more like he can get more money.
More promotions.
Yeah. And so women are like, okay.
They're like, oh, yay, more promotions for men.
More ways for them to get clout from each other. Perfect. A perfect system. Anyway, so then Sarah finally complains and looks into Joel. She's like, you have to look into him. I can't take it anymore. And they, of course, do the investigation. It turns out the real problem was that she wasn't good at her job this whole time.
Yeah, bad communication skills.
And so they fire her and she's kicked out without any of her stuff. Well, Sarah, was it all worth it?
This is something that I found just like really heartbreaking about all people in power. These were sins of omission. It wasn't things they did. It was the things they didn't do. And I do feel like this is like such a major root of most evil right now is that there are bad people doing bad things and anyone who can stop it is just like, I don't know. What, where?
Yeah.
Like, could I make money off of it? Like, no one cares. No one who's in charge of anything cares about anybody else.
They've crossed the sins of omission line in my perspective.
Well, now. But I think for a long time as they gathered power.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, now she's working on AI, the future of AI weaponry. So good luck to us, huh?
Yay.
Can't wait to see her be like, from the inside, I was trying to help by introducing Elon Musk the idea of bomb porn, where you jerk off to people getting exploded. I didn't think anything bad could come of it. I thought it would be helpful. So then she's like, where am I now? I had a third kid. She's like, every doctor recommended I didn't do it because of what had happened to me. I could have died. And almost everybody else that's happened to has died. So they've never, ever in their lives seen someone have a baby afterwards. She goes, and it was tough. I won't get into the details, but at least now we're all alive. And I'm like, oh, so there's something like really fucking wrong with you.
Yeah. I mean, after she gets fired, she goes, I mean, if I hadn't been fired, I wouldn't have lasted much longer. And I'm like, okay, well, this entire book was you saying, I realized I had to quit. I realized I had to quit. It was a hard read.
It's hard not to feel like we're at the other side and so hopeless. But I guess, all tech giants come to an end. I don't think Mark Zuckerberg's going to last forever. And I think here's something that it did make me feel better about.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at the Trump campaign, especially compared to like the Mamdani campaign, which was so grassroots, so like human beings knocking on doors, I feel it's easy right now to get the sense that like so many people are so hateful. And I guess if you can be moved by a Facebook post to literally murder, then I don't know. I don't know what that says about humanity. But I do think right now, people are being targeted with misinformation in this way that not everybody wakes up every day this pissed off. And I think if they could get the right information, most people could land on a good side. Does that make sense? Like,
yeah.
I don't know. When you see how specific and targeted it is from the Trump campaign, it kind of gave me hope that like most people wouldn't have voted for him except for that they had this like mastermind manipulating this tool to like create a fake reality.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if we could get everybody back to a real reality, maybe we could all find a little bit of like respect for one another and human life.
I just don't know how we do it.
Yeah.
Because they've created so many ways that people are just deeply reliant on these false versions of society.
Yeah, it feels like people are so deeply entrenched that it's like hard to pull them out. I don't know. So it's the bummer of a book. I guess it's worth a read if you really like need a little help pushing yourself off the train tracks or something, Okay, I love you guys so much. Stay alive, stay hopeful, stay optimistic.
Yeah, no,
touch grass.
Honestly, things are good someday.
We love you guys. Bye.